Three, two, one. Mary McCarthy here with the Data Tea, coming to you for the first time from what is my home base. I just haven't been here in a while, Los Angeles, California, and I'm delighted to be joined today by somebody speaking to us from post-dinner time, I think, over in Berlin, Mehdi Ouazza. Mehdi, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mara. It's a pleasure to be there. Really fan of your show.
Yeah. I actually heard about you initially from, I think it was somebody on our marketing team. We were going through some of the people who have, YouTube channels and good writing out there about data engineering. You are a senior data engineer, but you're also someone who puts out quite a lot of content about data engineering, which is in many ways like this kind of new topic or something that certainly has been around for a while, but has come into its own of late. And I think as a content creator, you've kind of jumped on that bandwagon and said, let me be one of the people who maybe popularizes this term, but also just explains what it means, gets into the nitty-gritty of it. So let's start, first of all, though, just by talking about you. We know you're in Berlin. What else do we need to know about Mehdi Ouazza?
I've been working in data for the past 8 years now. I started as a BI developer, and I actually got an opportunity to work on a big data project with on-premise cluster, which back then was pretty rare. So I learned Hadoop and Spark on the job while it was really in the early days. And then all the companies started to invest it into big data infrastructure. So I basically looked like an alien because I had one project experience, which is nothing. Like nowadays, if you have one project in Spark, it's nothing, right? But I basically surfed on that wave for the past years, and growing up as a data engineer, mostly in big corporates first, and then as I'm coming out from Belgium, I moved to Berlin to join mostly the tech scene and scale up company over here. And yeah, it's been a blessing to grown up on the tech scene here since then.
I'm always blown away by just how recent all of this is, right? You did a great video about basically kind of the history of data engineering, and and so many fields, obviously, it will say like any modern science or engineering field, it's like, well, the early days were 1900s. That was, things fairly far
away. Yeah. I look like a really old man now. Yeah.
Yes. Or they're, long gone. Whereas you start your video, it's not that hard to do a history of data engineering video because it's like, let's start in the dark ages of 2010.
Yeah.
It's all, which is incredible to think how far things have come. So what pushed you from doing data engineering during the day, going from a BI analyst up to becoming what we think of as a data engineer? What made you sort of want to share your knowledge publicly, by writing on Medium and doing YouTube videos?
It's actually I started with writing about a bit more than a year ago, and it was mostly in the context of documentation process, I would say. So I was going into conference pre-COVID, and I had to give a summary of my colleagues, right? And I figure out okay, why not make it public, right? And I back then was just the Spark Summit organized by Databricks, and it got some traction. I figured out, okay, so some people are actually interested in that topic. So yeah, I committed to basically write a blog post once a month about data engineering, what I learned, but really mostly just documenting what I learned from that specific month, not in a sense where I want to do mentoring or learn basics. I start maybe to do a bit more on that because people are reaching me out to how to do I get into data engineering. But first was mostly that. So that was the blog thing, and then I realized that some writer that I was following had actually a YouTube channel, and I figured out, oh, that looks interesting, so why not jumping on that? And yeah, so I start in December, so it's been 6 months. And yeah, it's been challenging to keep the pace and the consistency on both blogs and starting the YouTube channel. So I'm still figuring that the whole system out. But yeah, it's really nice because it's a different way to express myself over there. on YouTube. So yeah, I really enjoy still doing both.
Yeah, and I discovered first the videos and then didn't realize you had this whole long repertoire of Medium articles.
Yeah.
And they're both good, but actually there's a lot more in your blog because you don't
Yeah.
have as many videos. So anyone watching, I would suggest check out the Medium articles, even above the videos. The great thing about the videos is you managed to pull something off that not a lot of people do. And which is even harder because you are not, obviously you have excellent English, but you're not a native speaker. They're really funny, and it's hard to be funny in one's own language, let alone in a language that's not your native tongue. I assume that's just your personality that's coming through, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's one of the reason why I went to YouTube. I mean, being fun while writing is pretty difficult, right? You can do memes. I actually did some that that were quite some success because of that. So, but yeah, it's pretty limited, right? So, and also actually, like as I publish on Medium organization, meme is sometimes a difficult topic due to copyright, right? So some of them doesn't allow them. Yeah, YouTube is definitely more free on that. Like I can literally express, and I also have, like, I must say, two unfair advantage is that I used to do a lot of video editing because of my father's job when I was a teenager. So this is something where I'm comfortable. And then also everything related to sound engineering. I did a lot of music intensively in bands and so on. So this also is really easy for me to set up good sound setup, etc. So the barrier to entry was on the technical part. I would say easier, but still it requires an insane amount of work.
Right, I know. Even
Yeah,
watching a video takes a ton of work, but
yeah, and yeah. So
no,
this is like basically how I'm getting there on YouTube, and I still trying to find my voice, right? But to come back to you were saying, yeah, I feel like as engineer we tend to explain complex problem in a serious manner, and that's sometimes a bit scary, you know, to approach to understand it. Like, let me explain distributed system. Like, if you're like a new learner, it's yeah, it's difficult topic. So I figured out, like, there is quite some sketches on YouTube around engineering, but there are pure sketches, you know, sarcasm
just
sketches,
kind of
which are
parodies
but
the typical engineer.
exactly. But I found there is like a middle ground to find to being fun and learn something. And when I think about it, like the most remember talks that I saw on conference, right? They all had a story that sticks, right? They all had a funny thing that I remember, right? And it was, I would say, technical conference, right? So yeah, I think it's a challenge, but I think it's definitely worth it challenge to make the content more digest, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of how people learn nowadays, I'm just assuming everybody learns how I learn, is when there's a new topic or concept, what do? You maybe first Google it, but fairly quickly then you just YouTube it and find somebody who can explain it in a way that you understand. And
Yeah.
I find with data concepts, data engineering concepts, that's certainly what I do. And and as you know, some of the terms are I find with data engineering, the terms are easy on the surface, like data warehouse, data lakehouse. They're very, straightforward. But obviously there's a lot of subtleties to it. And one of your favorite videos is the one that breaks down the data warehouse versus the data lakehouse. And what's the third one?
Yeah, I mean, it's data warehouse, data lake, and lake house. Yeah,
Data
yeah,
lakehouse, and then the data sea house, you say.
yeah. See house, like, yeah, because it's at the end, it's like there is also this website, you know, where you have to guess if it's a big data framework or a Pokemon.
Oh,
This is
right.
literally this is a well-known
I
website,
haven't seen that one.
and
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
you can type on Google Pokemon or big data, and this is
right.
like ending up there. It's really difficult actually to make sense of the things out of there. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, at the end of that video of your data warehouse versus data lake versus data lakehouse video, again, it's really funny. It's fairly brief, but at the end you have a nice diagram that shows, well, there's actually quite a lot of crossover between the warehouse and the lake house. And again, I knew that, but sometimes when you see a diagram done in a different way or hear someone say it in a different way, it clicks more. So it was with your explanation that I was like, oh, I kind of know how to explain to myself what that relationship is. So yeah, your teaching is great. Let's go away from the videos a little bit and just get into the hard stuff. You obviously, you follow all the big trends in the data engineering community. From your perspective, either, it can be related to your day job or just the research and reading you do on the side. What are the current big trends that you find the most interesting and important?
A lot, I would say. Too much. But if I may zooming out, I would say like the general trends I can see, I mean, we're discussing that earlier, is that there is more interest in data engineering in general, right? I feel like back in the days, it's just like 10 years ago, data science was super hyped. Data scientist role was super hyped. Every company was hiring data scientists. And most of those companies were not mature enough in data to do any machine learning or proper analytics. And they realized now this past year that they actually need good foundation, good data platform, and hence good data engineers.
It was kind of they ended up hiring data scientists who actually became by default.
Yeah, there is so much of them that I know. There is also this diagram from Google that states that they are spending 90% of their time cleaning up data and making it, I would say, viable for any analytics purpose. So,
which is
that's
what you like that. Yeah. If you, for those of us who think that's the interesting part, it's great, but not when you were planning to do. The hallowed data science that you were hoping.
Exactly. So like this was the reality, I feel, and now there is traction around data engineering, and it's also all the SaaS company there is a ton of new products that say, hey, actually this is a big problem that we kind of oversee, right? So there is new startup because if you see like on the data warehouse landscape, right, a lot of new companies that were not even there 10 years ago. So in that sense, I think there is a lot of more tooling that democratize data engineering, make it more affordable, like lowering the technical barrier to make it more affordable to other data citizens, like data analysts, for example. So this is like the general trends that I can see. And now, if I need to bet like on what's the next challenge, right? Then if you have basically more people doing data pipeline because they can with higher framework tool that enable them to do that, then you for sure need more tooling around data catalog, data lineage, and data quality, because like those things used to sit in control of a same team, right, that was doing everything, like a pipeline. Data engineer say, we need that pipeline to be done. He's doing that, and he can manage, the control of the lineage, quality, and the catalog for themselves. But what happens if you have actually, 100,000 of stakeholder external data analysts that's being able to do data pipeline and generate those assets, right? You need to have basically tooling for them to help and to keep a certain governance on the lineage, like where does that data set come from, where is it, who is the owner, and provide the data quality framework for them to make, I would say, production ready data sets. So I mean, that's like the big challenge for me, is like, how do I scale what I used to do myself, right, as a middleman, to other people, like providing frameworks. So this is like the big mindset shift, where before I was the data engineer that was doing the work, and now I provide the tool to enable people to do that work and be autonomous.
Without advertising for any particular company or product, are there certain tools that you either have a particular affinity for now, or that that you see as really interesting and you want to try out? When it comes to the data reliability and the
I think on data quality, data observation platform, there is a lot of things going on. But to be honest, all of them are pretty early when you count of it, right? It's like 2 or 3 years. So yeah, Monte Carlo, Big Eye, Soda, and there is also open source framework that's been there, like Great Expectation for data quality. But I think all of that needs to live a bit more to, I mean, see, okay, who can stand out and survive. So it's difficult for me. Like I've looked a bit on some of them, but I don't have any practical preference because they're still pretty early. I think they do work on really interesting and problem that needs to be addressed in the future, right?
Mhm.
But it's a really big bet to say, okay, I think this one stand out compared to the other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my feeling of that market too. It's that we're still maybe about 2 years from where there'll be that real kind of sifting that where one or two products will kind of come.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's your kid in the background. So I saw.
Yeah, that's my kid in the background. But fortunately, my wife is over there.
Okay, if you need to get up, that's totally fine.
No, that's fine.
Keeping you up late over in Germany. I'm always living in fear that my Chihuahua is going to start barking. So
Yeah, no, that's fine.
that's the beauty of being able to talk across continents like this. So yeah, in that area, I think that the data stack is just kind of figuring itself out, and that one or two great products will probably emerge in the next couple of years, and then the others kind of fade away or get acquired or whatever happens. I'm curious about first of all, before I want to ask you about the tech scene in Berlin, but before that, do you consider yourself more of a software engineer by mindset or a data person? Or maybe you don't see that delineation as clearly as some people do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I'm a bit in between because, to be honest, I start as a data person, like coming from the BI and more close to the business, right? But those past year, my job has been more as a software engineer, and yeah, and I like both sides. And I think that's like the key thing of a good data engineer is that he has like both mindset of software engineering and really business value, because data is really, I mean, the work that we do is really correlated to actually the business data, right? So we need to have this communication going on. It's not like if you develop a feature for a product front end, right? You develop that feature, but you can do mock data and you provide that feature, it's okay. As a data engineer, if you have a project and you provide a feature but you don't understand your data, or if there's something wrong you didn't discuss with business, it's not going to happen. You still have to do discussion as a software engineer, with the product owner, to be sure that that's what the business want. But my point is, yeah, there is a more dependency to business due to data. So yeah, I really like to seeing myself like kind of in between, I would say.
Yeah, that's probably what makes you good. It's funny, I came into data from the perspective of being interested purely in data and not in the coding side of it, just data as information, and looking through this particular type of information for answers, coming from having been previously a journalist. And the further I get into it, the more I'm actually very interested in the software engineering side. I don't know if it's sort of like an increasing sort of introversion too, where there are some days where I just think it'd be great to do the coding and all that side without having to do.
It's never too late to record. I have actually someone that's coming from HR. That's there is so much boot camp. I mean, I don't want to oversell. Huh? It's challenging. You need to dedicate time.
Yes.
But I think that's the beauty today. If you have the opportunity and the luxury also to take time aside to learn of that, I think any change can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about the tech scene in Berlin. Is there a tech scene? I mean, my perspective is obviously Berlin is considered one of the very trendy, progressive places to live in Europe. So I would assume that there's something we would call a tech scene. But does that really exist anymore in the COVID world? What's it like there? What's your experience been?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I moved here like 2 years back, I actually did my research because I applied a bit around the world, both in the US actually and in Europe. And at the end, now I picked to stay in Europe for family reason, and I looked at the different city on the tech scene. That's like really what I wanted to go in a tech hub, and Berlin is still, I think, today a really good tech hub next to London, Stockholm, I would say. Regarding companies itself and data, we have like Snowflake as R&D engineer. I believe the AWS Redshift team is also there. AWS has a big office, at least was the case 3 years ago. I'm not sure if the information is still correct. And yeah, we have Tesla with the Gigafactory, which is being built, SoundCloud, Talendo. So yeah, big tech name. I mean, Klarna, which might be not, but still a lot of tech company. Spotify also open office there. So yeah, a lot of them. But the question then is like, how is going to shape it with the remote work? That's a really good question. I don't believe that we're going to have like those, exactly as you said, like, those tech cities. I think it's going to a bit spread out due to remote, right? I can see a lot of people already, some of them moving out from Berlin because the rent has been really expensive. I mean, increasing those past years, right? A bit like the scheme than San Francisco and the Bay Area, right? So yeah, it's interesting to know. I believe that we have a lot of US company also opening office here. But still in remote. So I guess like we're gonna have more a mix of a culture also, I believe, with US in Europe, because yeah, salary has been bumping clearly this past year here in Europe. Like I would say 15 to 20% is really huge. There is some people like the pragmatic engineer has been pulling out some numbers, but yeah, that's really insane how the market has shifted. And aside from the salary, I mean, there is all the, you've been living in Paris, but like the holidays and the parental leave, which is completely different, right? And I believe that
I'm in the US now, working in the US tech industry for a San Francisco-based startup, and I know all about the wonderful perks of salaries and benefits here in the US. It's great, but nothing beats 6 weeks vacation, right? And fully covered healthcare and all those amazing things that you have and that I had when I lived for a long time in France, that you certainly have in Berlin. So there's, and I've been following a lot of those discussions. There's increasing kind of transparency with a lot of sort of the big names in the industry going public with their salaries. Like I'm sure you saw Zach Wilson's.
I reacted on that.
For people who didn't see it, he's an Airbnb data engineer who posted not only his salary at Airbnb, but his climb, I think, from Facebook, Netflix, and then Airbnb. I thought it was really cool because he did it in a way, and some other people joined in and did the same thing. It wasn't like bragging, I'm making X amount of money. It was like, I want people to know you can make this much. And if you don't have a community of people who work in data and tech around you, this is going to help you negotiate your salary. It was interesting, certainly, to see the reactions from Europe where, high-level data engineers, people probably with a lot more experience, even than Zach, were like, wait a minute. He's making well over $500,000. But it doesn't account necessarily for some of the realities that you get living in Europe.
But I mean, it's still like, we are still like cheaper talent at the moment, I would say, even if the market has been increasing, that's for sure. Right. But again, there is a lot of things to consider, the work culture, and the parental leave. Like here, it's like 1.5 years per so to divide to 2 parents per child. So it's huge. It's not paid 100%, but it's a different mindset. Like same for Sweden. I know it's pretty strong, but I think this is gonna need to be adapted, right? Like if there is a US company that's hiring, then it's okay. But why do my colleague that I work with in Europe get to have those things and I don't, right? Like those kind of things. I think this is gonna happen more. I can see already like some fully remote company adjusting the number of holidays, no matter the country. Like there is a minimum legal. But what's tricky is that I think it's heavily related to regulation from the government, right? So, and that's going to be slow. So it's I think it's going to be challenging for the tech company to find like a common ground, but all in all, I think it's a really positive thing how it's shaping the market, making more homogeneous. So we're gonna take stuff as European, the good stuff from US, and they're gonna take the good stuff from Europe, I believe, at certain points.
And what we're discussing is like the kind of lifestyle and salary difference between a tech worker in the US versus in Europe. But there's like a kind of a moral underpinning to that. There's different values at play. I'm curious, when we look more specifically into like tech and data issues, we all know that the sort of moral standard, if you will, on data privacy is coming from Europe these days, right? Everyone basically has to try to get in line with GDPR. Is there sort of, from your European perspective, like a judgment? And I'm going to put this in simplistic terms, like that the Europeans feel like morally superior because they're way on this. I mean, for better or worse, I'm all for it. I think, it's great. But is there a sense sort of like that Americans are the villains here?
No, I mean, like I never thought it like that, because on my job, like GDPR just being a pain because it's so much harder. It makes my job, it's a good thing, right? But it makes my job so much harder to do. I remember back then where we just didn't care to get all the data from people. I mean, it's a good thing, but that makes the job harder. So no, I don't see it like that. Again, I think things are moving globally. That will. There was again like that case with Google Analytics, how and all the stuff. So not getting into detail, but I think the GDPR is like a first thing that's gonna influence everybody, and we're still like putting that in place. And when it's easy to put it in place, then there is less reason to argue to not doing it, right? So but I feel like today it's actually expensive for a company to be really well GDPR compliant at scale, right?
That's interesting, because you're describing more that it's not like a US versus Europe or Europe versus US thing. It's more like people who actually have to deal with it and create the environment for that compliance. Maybe some solidarity there, because it's kind of a pain in the ass for all of us, right?
Exactly. So this is how I'm thinking, and I believe like tech company, they actually don't care where your market is open, right? The engineering team is working on a single product. It's not like if you work like, I don't know, at a certain company, then the product is deployed per market, but the engineering team work together. So there might be some people in the US and then they decide to launch in Japan or launch in Europe. So they have to apply to the regulation over there. But it's not just, okay, we have the the US version and the European version, and that team is taking care of that and that. So I don't believe they really worked that way. That's why I don't really feel any competition, at least on the tech scale up I've been working with. It's like, we launched the US market, we need to adapt to that market. We need to launch the EU market, we need to adapt to this market.
Yeah, and it's all towards towards what I think are great ideals, but it's complicated to enact and anywhere. We're close to finishing time. Do you mind if we go 5 minutes over? Because I have 2 questions that I still want to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
One serious, and I told you I was going to ask you this, so it's not going to catch you by surprise. I'm going to bring geopolitics into this. I'm a firm believer that is like working in the tech/data industry, where we have a lot of privilege, right? We make good money, and we that in itself means a lot, in today's world, and so that we have a responsibility to sort of be aware of what's going on in society. And part of that right now, part of what's going on in the world is the war in Ukraine. Here in the US, my perspective is that it's something that has frankly really faded from the headlines. There's like all the big shock, and then sadly attention spans just like go away. I'm curious about what it's like being in Berlin, where obviously both like geographically and culturally you're closer to what's happening there. And especially since we know that a lot of tech workers were affected by this. There were a lot of both tech workers in Ukraine, and then also expat or immigrant tech workers from Ukraine. So what's your kind of take on that from what you've seen from your vantage point in Berlin?
Yeah. But so, yeah, but we're definitely closer. And, but to be honest, like, I feel like Berlin, because of like the tech scene, is kind of like, and I would not say disconnected, but like, yeah, I'm working full remote, right? With people all around the world. I definitely feel like in my network, yeah, some people moving in, and I help it like as I can, like, they get priority in the interview process if they need to find a job. So that's, I think, one thing that I see how it impacts and how I try to help. The other thing is that, yeah, we have the Ukrainian refugee in the central station in Berlin. But yeah,
So
but apart,
right there in front of you, like the crisis.
yeah. So you see them, right? And I can literally also feel it in my close network. Like hearing people, oh, they had to cancel their meeting because some company here are working with some Ukrainian folks, and yeah. So that brings you back to reality a bit more, I would say, than just watching the news, right? Obviously. But yeah, apart from that, it still feel like I think like maybe in the US, like we feel like the distance is really close, but in Europe you can make thousands of kilometers and cross 6 countries. I don't know, so which is not the case in the US, right? So even if we are close, we're close, but not really, which might be a bit sad. But yeah, at least I see that like Berlin is being welcoming as much as it can. Yeah,
right.
the
Yeah, no, it's
Ukrainians.
something that's much more alive there, and that's interesting, and hopefully things will improve. It is nice, certainly, to see the solidarity from Germans and from other European countries trying to help out with the refugee crisis. So that's a tough note to end on. So I want to end on something a little bit better. So what's next for you? Obviously, you've got your day job. You're going to stay as a data engineer. I understand it. Keep doing the content creation. What's kind of the next big step? Or you're just going to keep coasting along doing right now what you love?
No, it's I mean, yeah, so the goal is trying to basically a bit scale up my content, because I start again, my YouTube channel is 6 months 6 months old, and my blog 1 year and a half, so I'm still like really all new to this. But the next thing I would like to do is a podcast. So I have actually speaker confirmed. So this is gonna come in about a month. So I'm really looking forward. It's not going to be called the Data Coffee. But I'm looking forward because I'm doing it. Actually, I'm meeting with people on a weekly basis, randomly, that I met online, discussing topic. And so I figured out, okay, let's do it, online and share those insights together. So it's going to be really fun. And yeah, the other thing is the Data Creators Club. So this is the website I just launched. It's a really damn stupid website. But yeah, we don't have a single place to list all the data content creators.
Supposed to announce this. So it's a website that you launched just this week, and the title
just today, this morning.
Okay, news. What's the title of it, so we can find it?
So datacreators.club. Yeah, datacreators.club. Yeah,
find all the data creators they've ever
want. So basically I have a list. I started a list with 90 people, so that's a lot. Like all channels include like YouTube, Medium, podcast. You're on it, don't worry.
I know. I told you I'd come off the show if I wasn't on it.
but yeah, I had a lot of this question coming back often, like, hey, Mehdi, where do I find data content creator to learn from? And I've been learning a lot from those folks, big one and small one. And so I figure out that would be nice to have like a common place to just showcase them. I have a lot of ideas for features on that website, but I just want to hear the feedback from the people and see how it goes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll keep the eye out for the Data Coffee or some similarly named podcast coming from Mehdi Ouazza, and you go by Medio. And I'll put the link to the data creators club
Yeah.
In the comments on LinkedIn. So this has been amazing. I'll let you get to your son or daughter, who we heard in the
Son. Yeah, son. He's going to bed now because
we'll let
it's
you go.
7:30.
Bedtime
It's
story.
bed story time for me. I promise him just after our talk. So maybe that's why he was crying.
That's why he was crying. Awesome. This has been delightful. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and have a great day then.
Take care. Yeah. Bye-bye.
See you.